Hello students, welcome to Horario Class 8 Physics Classroom. I am Nandagopan and we are going to discuss Physics for Class 8. Today, we are going to learn our Basic Science textbook, and in the Basic Science textbook, you can see different chapters, and from here, you are going to study in high schools. From high schools, there is nothing called basic science. From here, you are going to study 3 different science subjects, and they are chemistry, biology and physics. So, we are discussing about physics, and in the part 1 textbook, we got 3 chapters regarding physics. And the chapter 1 is measurements and units. My dear friends, we are all know that we have different type of measuring units. What's mean by measurements? The word measurement means calculating something or calculating something. For example, I have drawn a line. I want to know that what is the length of this line. My students, please note the word length. I want to know that what is the length of this line. I draw a circle. I want to know that what is the area. What is the area included in this circle? So, you want to take care of this word area. I am standing here and I have a height. If you also have a certain height. So, I want to measure what is my height. I am standing here and with respect to this board, I have a height of or height up to this point. So, I want to measure what is my height. So, you want to take care of a third word, that is height. So, these are the general words we are using in our daily life. Length, area, height. These type of words we are using for finding the measurements of different type of things. So, in the coming chapters, we can discuss, or coming sessions, we can discuss what's meant by measurement and what are the units. There are different and several type of measurements. For example, I am going to a shop and I said to shopkeeper, I need 1 kilogram of sugar. If so many years back, during the time of our great grandfathers, if they are going to a shop and they said 1 kilogram of sugar, the shopkeeper would maybe recognize what they are saying. Instead of 1 kilogram, they may say that 1 nadi of sugar I want. I want 1 nadi of sugar. 1 kilogram is also a measurement and 1 nadi is also a measurement. What is the difference between kilogram and nadi? Kilogram is a universally accepted measuring tool or measurement. In considering nadi, it's a locally used measuring unit inside Kerala. If consider time, I will say this is 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock. If years before, our parents may say that this is 12 nadiga or 4 nadiga. Instead of clocks, they used nadiga as their measuring tool for measuring time. So, as the time changes, there is a great change in the measuring units we are using. So, a person from Kerala, a person from Kerala goes to another side of the world, they can't use these locally used measuring tools. So, we all need a world standardized measuring units. This time, we introduced the SI units. SI units. SI units stand for System Internationale, which means the internationally accepted system of units. So, if I go to France and say I need 1 kilogram of sugar, and I go to Delhi and I say 1 kilogram of sugar, or I go to Kozhikode, I ask shopkeeper for 1 kilogram of sugar, I will get standardized 1 kilogram of sugar. So, it is very important for us to keep a standard for measuring. So, how can we standard, or how can we classify, or how can we keep a standard measuring tool? For that, considering length. So, I draw a line from point A to point B. Dear students, how can measure the distance from A to B? Simply, if I am the student, I will use my finger to measure the distance. So, I will say it have a length of 1.5 of my fingers. Or other students come, or any other men come, or any other person who was eager to measure the distance, he will use the pen as a measuring tool. So, he said this line is with a distance of 2 pens. Or we can use other instruments also. So, if different persons are measuring the same line, first time I got 1.5 length of my hand, other time another boy get 2 pen distance. So, in same situation, the distance is not changing, but the unit is changing. So, we can't study, or we can't say this is a standardized. So, we decided to standardize the measuring of length. So, we introduced a unit. Which is known as meter. So, the meter is the unit of length. The length can be measured with the unit meter. And for denoting the meter, we are using small letter m as its symbol. So, I want to say the distance from A to B, for an example, the distance from A to B is 1 meter, which means the distance or the length is 1 meter. I can say the distance from the point of this board to this end will be 2 meter, which means the length is 2 meter. So, students, the meter is not only used for length. We also heard the width of a box is 2 meter. Height of a building. We all using meters in different situations. So, what is the difference between width, height and length? Commonly, when we say generally, width, height, breadth is everything is a measurement of length. We named these terms for the easiness of our measurements. For example, considering this board as a rectangular box, this rectangle have 2 sides, and the one side is length and the one side is breadth. But the measurements both are saying length. For the easiness of our recognitions, we are using one point as length and the other point as width. In other cases, what is happening in the case of height? The same condition is applied for the height also. The height means my length from the earth or the surface to my head, which means we are also measuring my length, but for the easiness or decreasing the confusions, we are using the term height. Okay, my students, I think you are very aware of the terms we are using for finding the length. Okay, for measuring a point or a line with this much of distance, it is very easy for us to measure it with the help of a scale. So, during the time of measuring this line, I can easily measure this with the help of this scale. But what happens if I want to measure the distance of this point? We want to measure the length of this point, but using the scale, it is very difficult to measure the length of a small point. So, every students, you people have a scale with yourself. So, you can see there are so many lines engraved in a scale. Here, I have a 30 centimeter scale. People, you have maximum probability of 15 centimeter scales. So, we discussed about meter. 1 meter is a unit of length. But now I discussed with a new term which is termed as centimeter. So, a 1 meter means, for example, the distance from A to B is considered to be 1 meter. Then what is centimeter? I am dividing this whole line into 100 pieces. I am dividing this whole lines with 100 lines, and the one line, the distance between the two lines can be termed as 1 centimeter. So, we are able to measure small distances also with the help of centimeter. Then what happens when we want to measure a length which is less than centimeter? In that condition, we use another unit which is known as millimeter, which is denoted with the letters mm. Centimeter, millimeter and meter. 1 meter, centimeter is 1 meter divided by 100. What in the case of millimeter? In the case of millimeter, we are dividing 1 centimeter into 10 equal parts. If consider a point A and B. For example, A and B have a length of 1 centimeter. I am dividing this line into equal 10 parts, and each one part or this one section measures 1 millimeter. So, we can measure small and smaller length using these kind of measurements. The basic measurement unit of a length is meter, and we can divide it into smaller and smaller pieces in order to make our measurements more easier. So, we are introducing what? We are introducing centimeter and millimeter. What happens if we want to measure a distance which is very smaller than these type of systems? For example, I want to measure width of a thickness of a paper. You all know a A4 sheet, and A4 sheet is a paper, and what will be the thickness of that paper? That will be very less than 1 millimeter. How can we measure such type of measurements? During those times or those conditions, we can introduce other type of measurement units also. Such type of an unit is nanometer. So, there are different type of measuring units also in the considering the measuring of lengths. Okay. So we discussed about how can we measure smaller lengths or smaller distances. For the convenience or for the easiness of our measurements, we can use centimeters or millimeter. Okay. So now in another case, I am taking a point A to B and said this distance is 1 meter. But I put a point A at Kozhikode and another point at Kottayam. My point A is at Kozhikode and my another point B is at Kottayam. How can we measure the distance between A to B? It will be very difficult to measure it when compared to match it with 1 meter. So we introduce another measuring unit here, which means we can introduce everybody in this session can know that that's known as kilometer. What's kilometer? Kilometer means 1 meter into 1000, which means 1000 meter is considered as 1 kilometer. If I am making a step of 1 meter and I made 1000 steps having a length of 1 meter, I can make it up to 1 kilometer. So easily we can measure the distance from Kozhikode to Kottayam. Example, it can be said that it's around 260 kilometers. So in this condition, we understand that we can measure length in a maximum condition and also in a minimum condition. If the measuring length is very small, we can easily use the convenient methods like centimeters or millimeters. If the distance is very high or very high, we can measure it with the units like kilometers. But what is the main point of discussing all of these things? The basic idea is to measure the length. So if any of us said we are measuring width, distance, thickness, all of these comprises to the term length, and we can measure it with the different type of units from centimeter, millimeter or kilometer or even in a term meter. Okay, so we studied about how can we measure lengths. So we discussed that there are different type of measuring tools are available around us. We use different measuring for weight, which means for mass, for volume or also for the length. So as the first session we discussed about the length. Length means the distance between 2 points, and we can assess or study it with the help of unit which is known as the basic unit which is known as meter. Earlier we discussed that there is a internationally adapted units which is known as SI units, and the SI unit of length is meter. SI unit of length is meter. Okay students, so I want you people to calculate or want to study what is the length of different type of things you are seeing around you. You want to measure your textbook's length, your phone thickness, that kind of things want to be measured and make a beautiful table. If any of you have any doubts in this session, please let me know. You can comment it in the comment section. Thank you.